What if I told you that while everyone around you is drowning in notifications, scrolling endlessly, and chasing every shiny new trend, there's a quiet revolution happening among those who've learned to see opportunity where others see only chaos? In the next few minutes, I'm going to share something that might sound counterintuitive at first, but by the end, you'll understand why this age of distraction might actually be your greatest competitive advantage. Right now, as you're listening to this, millions of people are simultaneously checking their phones, refreshing social media feeds, jumping from one task to another without ever completing anything meaningful. The average person checks their phone 96 times per day. That's once every 10 minutes during waking hours. But here's what's remarkable. While this digital epidemic has created unprecedented levels of scattered attention and surface-level thinking, it has also created something else entirely: the greatest opportunity gap in human history. You see, when everyone is distracted, focused attention becomes a superpower. When everyone is reactive, strategic thinking becomes currency. When everyone is loud, quiet consistency becomes magnetic. The very forces that are fragmenting most people's lives are simultaneously creating massive advantages for those who understand how to navigate them differently. This isn't about becoming a hermit or rejecting technology. This is about understanding something much more profound: how to win while everyone else is playing a different game entirely. Problem recognition. Have you noticed how exhausting it's become to stay competitive in today's world? There's this constant feeling that you need to be everywhere, know everything, respond to everyone, and keep up with every trend just to stay relevant. The pressure is relentless. Sarah, a marketing executive I worked with, described it perfectly. She said, "I wake up every morning already behind. By the time I check my messages, scan the news, and see what happened overnight in my industry, I feel like I'm running a race where the finish line keeps moving further away." She was working longer hours than ever before, consuming more information than any human in history had access to, and yet she felt less effective, less creative, and more anxious than she had in years. Does this sound familiar? That feeling of being pulled in 1,000 directions, of never quite catching up, of wondering how others seem to effortlessly navigate the chaos while you're struggling just to keep your head above water? You're not alone in this experience. And more importantly, you're not broken. You're simply playing by rules that were designed to keep you scattered. The modern world has created what I call success theater, the illusion that being busy, connected, and reactive equals being productive and successful. We've been convinced that the person with the most notifications, the fullest calendar, and the fastest response time is winning. But here's what I've observed after studying hundreds of genuinely successful people. The opposite is true. The people who are truly winning in this age of distraction have learned something that goes against everything we've been taught about staying competitive. They've discovered that the real game isn't about keeping up with the noise, it's about rising above it.
Think about a river during a flood. On the surface, everything is chaos. Debris rushing past, water churning, noise and confusion everywhere. But deep beneath the surface, the water moves with purpose and power. The debris on top gets swept away, but the deep current shapes the landscape. This is what's happening in our economy, our careers, and our lives right now. Most people are living on the surface, getting swept along by every new trend, every urgent message, every breaking news alert. But underneath, there's a different current flowing, one that the distracted majority can't even see. Are you ready to dive deeper? Are you willing to let go of the exhausting race on the surface to discover the powerful current beneath? Because once you understand how to access this deeper level, everything changes. The question isn't whether you can afford to step away from the chaos. The question is whether you can afford not to. Wisdom story. Let me tell you about Marcus, a software developer who transformed his entire career by understanding this principle in a way that changed everything. 3 years ago, Marcus was drowning in the same digital quicksand as everyone else. He was active on 5 different social media platforms, subscribed to dozens of industry newsletters, attended every virtual conference, and prided himself on being plugged in to every trend in tech.
His days were a blur of Slack notifications, email responses, and jumping between tasks. He was busy, connected, and completely overwhelmed. Then something happened that forced him to see differently. His internet went down for an entire week due to a service provider issue in his area. At first, he panicked. How would he stay current? How would he respond to clients? How would he know what was happening in his field? But by day 3 of his digital isolation, something unexpected emerged. Without the constant input and interruption, his mind began to work differently. Ideas that had been scattered started connecting. Problems he'd been wrestling with for months suddenly had clear solutions. He found himself thinking deeper about challenges rather than just reacting to them. When his internet returned, Marcus made a decision that his colleagues thought was career suicide. He deleted most of his social media accounts, unsubscribed from all but 3 essential newsletters, and created what he called connection windows, specific times when he'd engage with the digital world and protected times when he wouldn't. His peers worried he'd become irrelevant. His manager expressed concern about his reduced engagement. But something remarkable started happening. Because Marcus wasn't constantly reacting to every industry trend, he had time to think deeply about which trends actually mattered. Because he wasn't scattered across a dozen platforms, his contributions on the few platforms he chose became more thoughtful and impactful. Because he wasn't answering emails instantly, his responses became more strategic and valuable. Within 6 months, Marcus had identified a gap in the market that everyone else had missed. Not because they couldn't see it, but because they were too distracted to focus long enough to really understand it. He developed a solution, launched a side project, and within a year had built something that generated more income than his day job.
But here's the most important part. Marcus wasn't smarter than his peers. He wasn't more talented or better connected. He had simply learned to see what others couldn't see because they were looking in too many directions at once. This reveals something profound about how success really works in our current moment. The winners aren't the ones consuming the most information or responding the fastest. They're the ones who have learned to filter signal from noise, to think while others react, to go deep while others skim the surface. Marcus discovered what I call strategic invisibility, the art of stepping back from the obvious game to play a more sophisticated one. While his competitors were fighting for attention in crowded spaces, he was building something valuable in the quiet corners they couldn't see. Core truth. Here's what transforms everything about winning in this distracted age. True competitive advantage comes not from consuming more information or moving faster, but from developing the capacity to think deeper and act more strategically while others are caught in reactive loops. This flies in the face of everything we've been taught about staying competitive. We've been convinced that speed equals success, that being connected equals being relevant, that being busy equals being productive. But these assumptions were created in a different era, and they're not just outdated, they're actively counterproductive in today's environment. The real game being played right now isn't about who can process the most inputs or respond the fastest. It's about who can maintain clarity of thought, strategic focus, and consistent action while surrounded by chaos. It's about who can resist the pull of every urgent distraction to focus on what's actually important. Think about how a skilled archer operates. While others might be frantically shooting arrows in all directions, hoping to hit something, the master archer takes time to assess the target, account for wind conditions, breathe steadily, and release with precision. The difference isn't in the equipment or even the basic skill, it's in the ability to remain centered and focused while others are scattered and reactive. This is exactly what's happening in every industry, every market, every field right now. While the majority is scattered across multiple priorities, reacting to every trend and trying to be everything to everyone, a small percentage has learned to identify what truly matters, focus their energy there, and execute with unusual consistency. The paradox is beautiful. In an age where everyone feels pressure to do more, be more, and respond faster, The real advantage goes to those who do less, focus more, and respond more thoughtfully. But this isn't about being slow or disconnected. It's about being selective and strategic. It's about understanding that in a world full of noise, the ability to hear signal becomes incredibly valuable. In a world full of shallow interactions, the ability to go deep becomes magnetic. In a world full of reactive behavior, the ability to respond strategically becomes transformative. The people who understand this don't just win, they win while others don't even realize there was a competition happening.
Deep foundations. Now that you understand the core principle, let's explore how to actually implement this in your life. The transformation happens through 4 foundational shifts that work together to create what I call strategic advantage through selective attention. Foundation 1. Signal detection. The first foundation is developing the ability to distinguish between signal and noise in your environment. In our hyper-connected world, we're bombarded with thousands of inputs daily, but only a tiny fraction actually impact our success or well-being. Most people try to process everything and end up processing nothing effectively. The strategic approach is to develop filters that automatically sort what deserves your attention from what doesn't. This isn't about being informed less, it's about being informed more accurately. Start by conducting what I call an attention audit. For 1 week, track everything that captures your attention throughout the day. Every notification, every conversation, every article, every thought that pulls you away from focused work. Don't judge it, just observe and record. At the end of the week, categorize each attention grabber into one of 3 buckets. Essential, directly impacts your core goals. Useful, provides value but isn't urgent. Or noise, entertaining or temporarily interesting but ultimately irrelevant. Most people discover that 80% of what captures their attention falls into the noise category. This isn't a moral failing, it's the natural result of living in an environment designed to fragment attention. But once you see the pattern, you can start to change it. The goal isn't to eliminate all noise immediately. That would be overwhelming and unsustainable. Instead, gradually shift your attention allocation. Spend more time with essential inputs, schedule specific times for useful inputs, and systematically reduce exposure to noise. This single shift, becoming intentional about what gets your attention, creates an enormous advantage because while others are processing mostly noise, you're primarily engaging with signal. Your thoughts become clear, your decisions become better, and your actions become more effective. Foundation 2. Deep work capacity. The second foundation is developing what researcher Cal Newport calls deep work, the ability to focus without distraction on cognitively demanding tasks. In a distracted world, this becomes a superpower because it allows you to produce work that's both higher quality and more valuable than what others can create in shallow, fragmented attention states. Deep work isn't just about productivity. It's about accessing levels of thinking and creativity that are simply impossible when your attention is divided. When you can think deeply about problems, you see solutions that others miss. When you can focus intensely on learning, you develop expertise faster. When you can concentrate fully on creation, you produce work that stands out in a sea of mediocrity. One of the most effective protocols is what I call device quarantine during deep work sessions. All notifications off, phone in another room, internet access restricted to only what's essential for the task at hand. This isn't about being disconnected forever. It's about being completely connected to your most important work for specific periods. The compound effect of deep work capacity is remarkable because you're able to make meaningful progress on important projects while others are stuck in shallow work. You begin to see results that seem disproportionate to the time invested. This isn't magic. It's the natural outcome of focused attention applied consistently over time. Foundation 3. Strategic timing.
The third foundation is understanding that timing isn't just about when you do things, it's about when you don't do things. In a reactive culture, the ability to choose your timing strategically becomes a massive advantage. Most people operate in what I call response mode, immediately reacting to whatever demands their attention. Emails get answered as soon as they arrive. Meetings happen whenever others request them. Decisions get made under artificial urgency. This reactive pattern keeps you constantly off balance and prevents you from operating at your best. Strategic timing means taking control of when you engage with different types of activities based on when you can do them most effectively. This includes understanding your natural energy rhythms, protecting your peak performance hours for your most important work, and batching similar activities to minimize context switching. For example, rather than checking email throughout the day, you might process all communication during 2 specific time blocks. Rather than taking meetings randomly throughout the week, you might concentrate them on certain days to preserve uninterrupted time for deep work on others. This also applies to market timing and opportunity recognition. While others are reacting immediately to every trend or opportunity, you can take time to evaluate whether the timing is right for you to engage. Sometimes the strategic choice is to let others fight over early opportunities while you prepare for better ones that haven't emerged yet. The power of strategic timing compounds over time. Because you're operating when you're most effective rather than when others demand your attention, your work quality improves. Because you're choosing opportunities based on strategic fit rather than availability, your results improve. Because you're batching similar activities rather than context switching constantly, your efficiency improves. Foundation 4. Compound focus. The fourth foundation is understanding that small, consistent, focused actions compound into extraordinary results over time, while scattered efforts across multiple priorities produce mediocre results everywhere. In our instant gratification culture, we've lost appreciation for the power of compound focus. We want immediate results from every effort, and when we don't see them, we jump to something else. But the people who are winning while others are distracted understand that sustained focus on fewer priorities creates exponential returns. This doesn't mean working on only one thing forever. It means working on fewer things for longer periods, allowing the compound effect to build momentum before shifting focus. It means resisting the temptation to chase every new opportunity in favor of maximizing the opportunities you've already committed to.
Compound focus requires both patience and faith. Patience because the results aren't immediate and often aren't visible to others until they reach a tipping point. Faith because you have to believe that consistent action in the right direction will eventually produce extraordinary outcomes, even when progress feels slow. The practical application is to identify the 2 to 3 areas where focused effort will have the greatest long-term impact on your goals, then commit to making progress in those areas consistently while saying no to most other opportunities. This is difficult because it means watching others seemingly get ahead in the short term while you're building something more substantial but less visible. But here's what happens over time. While others have scattered their efforts across dozens of initiatives and achieved modest results in each, you've achieved breakthrough results in your chosen areas. While others are starting over repeatedly because they never stayed with anything long enough to see real results, you're accelerating because you have momentum and expertise. The combination of these 4 foundations creates what I call strategic momentum, the ability to make meaningful progress on important goals while others are stuck in reactive patterns. You're not working harder than others, but you're working with much greater strategic clarity and focus. Advanced applications. Now let's explore how these principles apply in specific contexts where most people struggle to maintain focus and strategic thinking. Professional advancement. In your career, the distraction epidemic has created unprecedented opportunities for those who understand how to stand out through depth rather than breadth. While most professionals are trying to be visible on every platform, relevant to every trend, and responsive to every request,
Strategic professionals are building deep expertise and valuable relationships. The key insight is that in a noisy professional environment, quiet competence becomes magnetic. Rather than broadcasting every achievement or opinion, focus on consistently delivering exceptional work that speaks for itself. Rather than networking broadly, build deeper relationships with key people who can actually impact your career trajectory. This means saying no to most speaking opportunities, industry events, and professional obligations that don't directly serve your strategic goals. It means choosing one or two professional platforms where you can build genuine authority rather than trying to maintain a presence everywhere. It means focusing on projects that build your reputation for specific types of excellence rather than general busyness. The compound effect in professional contexts is particularly powerful because reputation builds exponentially. Once you're known for exceptional work in a specific area, opportunities begin seeking you out rather than you having to chase them. But this only happens if you resist the temptation to dilute your focus across too many areas. Creative work. For creative professionals, the distraction epidemic has both made creativity more challenging and more valuable. The constant input and interruption make it difficult to enter the deep, contemplative states where original ideas emerge. But because most creatives are struggling with the same challenges, original work stands out more dramatically than ever. The strategic approach to creative work in a distracted age is to create what I call idea sanctuaries, protected time and space where your mind can wander, connect seemingly unrelated concepts, and generate genuinely novel solutions. This requires both defending against external distractions and learning to quiet internal mental chatter.
Many successful creatives have discovered that their best ideas come not during brainstorming sessions or when actively seeking inspiration, but during periods of relaxed focus, walking, exercising, or engaging in routine activities that occupy the conscious mind while allowing the unconscious to work. The key is to alternate between periods of focused input, learning, researching, gathering raw material, and periods of relaxed processing, letting ideas incubate without pressure. Most people stay stuck in input mode, constantly consuming, but never allowing time for original synthesis. Business and entrepreneurship. In business, the advantages of strategic focus while others are distracted are perhaps most pronounced. Markets are increasingly being won not by companies with the most resources or the loudest marketing, but by those with the clearest focus and most consistent execution. The distracted majority of businesses are chasing every new marketing channel, every trending strategy, every potential customer segment. They're spread thin across multiple initiatives, unable to execute any single one exceptionally well. This creates enormous opportunities for businesses that choose fewer objectives and pursue them with unusual consistency and depth. Strategic businesses are asking different questions. Rather than how can we grow faster, they're asking what's the most sustainable path to growth. Rather than how can we reach more people, they're asking how can we serve our ideal customers better than anyone else. Rather than what's the next trend we should follow, they're asking what enduring value can we create. This shift in questioning leads to fundamentally different strategies and much better long-term results. But it requires resisting the constant pressure to react to competitors, chase trends, or pursue every opportunity that presents itself. Personal development. The principles apply powerfully to personal growth as well. The self-improvement industry has created an expectation that we should be optimizing everything simultaneously: our productivity, relationships, health, finances, mindset, and more. This scattered approach to development typically produces scattered results. Strategic personal development means identifying the 1 to 2 areas where improvement would have the greatest compound impact on your life, then focusing there until you see meaningful results, before expanding to other areas. This goes against the cultural expectation of working on everything at once, but it produces much better outcomes. For example, rather than trying to build 7 new habits simultaneously,
Focus on one habit that would naturally support several areas of your life. Rather than reading books on dozens of different topics, focus deeply on books that directly serve your current growth priorities. The goal isn't to become a person who's optimized in every area immediately. It's to become someone who can identify what matters most, focus there consistently, and achieve meaningful results while others are scattered across surface-level improvements that don't stick. Environmental design. One of the most powerful aspects of winning while others are distracted is designing your environment to support focus and strategic thinking rather than reaction and scattered attention. Your environment, both physical and digital, is constantly shaping your behavior, often in ways you're not conscious of. Your physical space should support the type of thinking and work you want to do. This means creating areas that are specifically designed for deep work, free from visual and auditory distractions. It also means having easy access to tools and resources that support your priorities while making distracting options less convenient. Consider the difference between a cluttered desk with multiple screens, notifications, and interruptions versus a clean workspace with only the essentials for your current priority. The second environment naturally guides your attention toward focused work, while the first fragments it across multiple stimuli. Many successful people have discovered that having separate spaces for different types of activities dramatically improves their ability to maintain appropriate mental states. A space for deep work that's different from spaces for communication, different from spaces for relaxation, different from spaces for creative exploration. Digital environment. Your digital environment is even more critical because it's with you constantly and has been specifically designed to capture and fragment your attention. Taking control of your digital environment isn't about rejecting technology. It's about configuring it to serve your goals rather than corporate engagement algorithms. This includes customizing notification settings so only truly important communications can interrupt focused work. It includes organizing your digital tools and information systems to support your priorities rather than just accommodating everything. It includes creating friction for distracting activities while reducing friction for important ones. For example, removing social media apps from your phone while keeping them accessible on your computer creates a small barrier that's enough to prevent mindless scrolling while still allowing intentional engagement. Using website blockers during deep work sessions, organizing your email with filters that prioritize important communications, and setting up your workspace software to minimize context switching. The goal is to create an environment where focused, strategic behavior is the path of least resistance, while scattered, reactive behavior requires conscious effort to initiate. Social environment. Perhaps most importantly, your social environment, the people you spend time with, and the conversations you regularly engage in, profoundly impacts your ability to maintain focus and strategic thinking. If you're surrounded by people who are constantly reactive, always responding to the latest crisis or trend, always scattered across multiple priorities, it becomes much more difficult to maintain a different approach. The social pressure to match the energy and attention patterns of those around you is enormous. Strategic people actively curate their social environment to include others who value depth over breadth, quality over quantity, and long-term thinking over short-term reaction. This doesn't mean only associating with people who are identical to you, but it does mean prioritizing relationships with people who support and understand your commitment to focused work and strategic thinking. This might mean spending less time in environments where scattered attention is the norm, and more time in environments where sustained focus is valued. It might mean changing how you engage in conversations, steering them towards deeper topics rather than surface-level reactions to current events. Execution strategies. Understanding the principles is one thing, but implementing them consistently in a world designed to fragment your attention requires specific strategies and systems.
The priority filter system. One of the most effective strategies is developing a systematic approach to evaluating opportunities, requests, and potential commitments before they can fragment your focus. This involves creating clear criteria for what deserves your attention and what doesn't, then applying those criteria consistently. Start by identifying your core objectives, the 2-3 areas where progress will have the greatest impact on your long-term goals. Every opportunity or request should be evaluated against these objectives. If it doesn't directly serve one of them, the default answer is no, regardless of how interesting or potentially valuable it might seem. This requires developing comfort with missing out on things that might be good in order to focus on things that are great. It requires trusting that the compound effect of sustained focus will produce better results than scattered efforts across multiple opportunities. The attention budget approach. Just as you manage your financial resources, you can manage your attention as a finite resource that should be allocated strategically rather than spent reactively. This means becoming conscious of how you're currently spending your attention and making deliberate choices about how to spend it better. Track your attention allocation for a week, noting how much time and mental energy goes toward different categories of activities. Then evaluate whether that allocation aligns with your priorities and adjust accordingly. This might mean batching certain types of activities, eliminating others entirely, or protecting more time for activities that directly serve your core objectives. The key insight is that attention, like money, is much more powerful when concentrated than when scattered. Small amounts of attention spread across many areas produce minimal results in each, while substantial attention focused on fewer areas produces breakthrough results.
The strategic delay protocol. Rather than responding immediately to every request or opportunity, develop the habit of strategic delay, taking time to consider whether and how to respond based on your priorities, rather than the urgency conveyed by others. This doesn't mean being unresponsive or unprofessional. It means recognizing that most things that feel urgent aren't actually time-sensitive, and that taking time to consider your response usually leads to better outcomes than reacting immediately. Create standard response protocols for different types of requests. For example, you might respond to true emergencies immediately, respond to important but non-urgent requests within 24 hours, and respond to non-important requests weekly or not at all. This allows you to maintain relationships and professional obligations while protecting your focus for what matters most. The deep work scheduling system. Protect your most valuable thinking time by scheduling it like you would schedule important meetings. This means identifying when you do your best work, blocking those times on your calendar, and treating them as non-negotiable commitments to